Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your severe weather update for Monday the 16th of December 2024. Today we're going to be talking about the heavy to locally intense rainfall across the southeast and central Queensland coastlines. We'll give tropical northern Queensland also a forecast update with a weak tropical low expected up there. We'll give the northern parts of Australia a forecast as well and talk about the extreme heatwave conditions extending across Australia's red centre. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. The support lately has been much appreciated, but let's get stuck straight into things today where this low pressure system is offshore from the central Queensland coastline. So starting off with central Queensland, very healthy rainfall accumulations have been reported overnight. Bundaberg picking up a healthy 60 millimetres and plenty of stations between Bundaberg and Rockhampton in excess of 25 millimetres. Some picking up to 100 millimetres, 103 millimetres fell overnight at Captain's Creek with more rainfall also on the way there. Gladstone has picked up some healthy falls as well over the past 12 hours. Plenty of rainfall to go around. It's been really good to see as this low pressure system slowly wraps itself up well offshore from the Whitsundays. This system here is not resemblance of a tropical low, even though it does look and is behaving like one, but it isn't a tropical low in pretty much any way. It's just a weak low pressure system connected to a surface trough that's offshore from the Queensland coastline, bringing in a plenty of rainfall for the central Queensland, even into the southeast Queensland coast as well. Let's talk about what this system's going to be doing over the coming couple of days. So in terms of the rainfall, the bulk of it today is going to be around the Sunshine Coast, extending into the northern parts of the Sunshine Coast. Plenty of rainfall also expected for the eastern side of Fraser Island, and then later this afternoon we'll see showers and thunderstorms extend pretty consistently throughout the central Queensland area. Plenty of showers and storms expected to go around for communities between Bundaberg up to about Ogmore. Those storms will intensify actually around the Mackay sort of area later on this afternoon before weakening off this evening, and mainly convective thunderstorms blowing up in the afternoon. Those storms there don't really have the chance of being severe, but they could still drop some heavy rainfall and have some damaging winds here and there. Later on into the evening, this low pressure system is going to make a turn for the coastline, probably getting very close to the Yeppoon sort of area. In fact, a little bit further north of Yeppoon out towards Samuel Hill. This low pressure system here will be at its strongest as well this afternoon and into this evening, and as such, heavy falls are expected between Yeppoon down to Bundaberg, including Rockhampton, Agnes Water and Gladstone later on this afternoon and into early tomorrow morning. The bulk of the rainfall that's going to be coming through over the next 3 days, at least for these following communities: Rockhampton, Agnes Water, Gladstone, Bundaberg, and even inland out towards Biloela. The majority of the rainfall that's going to be coming through this week will be coming through tonight and into early tomorrow morning, and I'm expecting tomorrow morning to wake up to some big rainfall accumulations, potentially into the hundreds around Gladstone, Agnes Water, and especially up towards Rockhampton. It's going to be between Rockhampton and Agnes Water, so i.e. Gladstone, where the bulk of the rainfall is going to be picked up. In fact, Gladstone really does look like it's going to get the majority of the rainfall here. And then further inland out towards the coastal ranges, just adjacent to the coastline, Mount Perry is probably about as far south as the heavy falls will be, but Miriam Vale, even inland towards Biloela and Wawan, some big falls are also expected out there. Biloela probably not going to get the big falls. The showers and storms will continue throughout tomorrow as well. You can see they're widespread across central Queensland. The storms, at least from the convective pattern in the afternoon and evening. This low pressure system, though, it's going to slowly weaken off throughout Tuesday, and then as you can see, the rainfall does contract further north and becomes a lot more tropical focused, and I will get to that in just a few moments. But in terms of the forecast of the southeast and the central coast of Queensland, it looks like the really heavy stuff clears out Tuesday. We also have that chance of severe thunderstorms on Tuesday and Wednesday with the southeast of Queensland. I'm going to get to that in just a few moments, but before that we're going to talk about those rainfall accumulations that are expected over the coming couple of days. So the bulk of the rainfall, like I said, coming through tonight and into tomorrow morning. I am expecting to wake up to some big rainfall accumulations. You can see 3-day rainfall accumulations outside of Agnes Water and Gladstone in excess of 120 millimetres. I even reckon that number here for Gladstone, that might be a little bit conservative, especially if they get themselves under the right shower bands tomorrow. Up to 150 millimetres certainly is possible. Now, it is tropical rainfall, so it is still very hard to put a number on exactly what rainfall is expected and exactly where it is going to be. It's the most unpredictable type of rainfall that you can get around Australia. So again, take this forecast with a small pinch of salt, but the forecast models are in great congruence for locations between Rockhampton and right down through Agnes Water and even as far south as Bundaberg. Those locations are expecting at least sort of 60 or 70 millimetres tonight, potentially into the triple figures. And again, I would not be surprised if the wettest accumulations tomorrow morning were 150 millimetres, and it just so happens that it looks like Gladstone is going to be in the firing line for some of those really heavy accumulations. For Gladstone especially, the rainfall is going to be very welcome. They've certainly had some good rainfall over the last couple of days, but it's going to pale in comparison to what's going to come through tonight. The soils around there are are starting to get quite saturated. Of course, they could do with some more rainfall, but 150 millimetres falling in 6 or 12 hours, that could cause some flooding concerns there. So just make sure that you've got the river level charts in the back of your head. Just make sure that you're not in any immediate danger of flooding. Keep checking up with the Bureau of Meteorology and make sure you heed all warnings as they come through. I would not be surprised if a severe weather warning was issued later this afternoon for heavy rainfall. It certainly does constitute heavy rainfall, this weather event. Now that's it for Central Queensland. If I've left any of your questions unanswered, or if you've got some feedback that you'd like to add for the forecast or a rainfall report for your location, I'm all ears in the comments section. Heading a little bit further north now into the more sort of tropical northern Queensland, at least for the next couple of days. There's going to be a bit more of a confusing forecast update here, but we've got plenty of showers and storms coming through on Wednesday. We're also going to get a bit of an onshore flow develop for locations between Townsville down to Ogmore throughout Wednesday, and as this onshore flow materialises with that low pressure system located just adjacent to the coastline a little bit further inland, communities along the coast are going to get pummeled with rainfall, especially around the Mackay, West Hill and St Lawrence area. There's going to be some big falls there Wednesday evening and to the 9 a.m. on Thursday. Heavier falls than what Gladstone is expecting, at least over the coming couple of days. So this rainfall here, it's going to be very heavy. It's going to be pretty consistent as well by the looks of things, and reciprocated between the other forecast models. So I've got great reason to believe that this is actually going to materialise here on the forecast. This onshore flow is certainly going to result in some healthy rainfall accumulations along the central Queensland coastline. And then out towards Charters Towers, also some good falls expected there on this forecast, at least from thunderstorms. It looks like those coastal ranges are going to do a good job at stopping the rainfall, and those coastal ranges just adjacent to Townsville means that the rainfall is going to really build up around sort of Charters Towers from this low pressure system. And then throughout the next couple of days, Thursday and Friday, just to round out the week, plenty of rainfall around the far north of Queensland. That ties into the tropical low pressure system as well. That's expected to wrap itself up offshore from the far north Queensland coastline. So the Bureau of Meteorology is still tracking this system here and giving it a very slight chance of tropical cyclone development. I don't think this system will ever develop into a tropical cyclone, but nonetheless it is expected from Thursday onwards to be the main driver of that heavy rainfall across the central Queensland coastline. And this weak surface low pressure system, that's certainly going to cause some problems in terms of rainfall, I imagine, around the Mackay area, because if they pick up 100 millimetres Wednesday night and Thursday morning, the ground's already saturated, and then another deluge expected Friday afternoon and evening, and you can see the rainfall really heavy around the Whitsundays, Proserpine, and extending out through Bowen and Eyre, and even out towards Townsville. There's plenty of rainfall to go around. I mean, you can see it on this picture here. There's too many towns for me to name in this video that are going to pick up significant rainfall accumulations throughout Friday and Saturday. Townsville expecting a good drop of rainfall throughout both Friday and Saturday. It looks like this low pressure system pulls itself away from the coastline throughout Sunday, so the rainfall will still be heavy at times around Townsville on Sunday, but for the remainder of the northern and the central coast of Queensland, the rainfall will clear out by Saturday afternoon and then through Sunday as well, and then by Monday it's going to be high and dry again for the Queensland coastline, just in time for what looks to be a pretty dry and storm-free Christmas. Don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but it looks like for the most part Christmas is looking a little bit calmer than what we had last year. In terms of peak rainfall accumulations, again, there's so much to talk about here, and to better understand it, we've got to just talk about how this rainfall is going to be moving. So I would like to just break this down for you, and I know this is going to sound pretty confusing, but we've got these two low pressure systems causing this rainfall here. The first one we talked about just a few minutes ago, and that's the one driving the rainfall ashore around the Rockhampton and Gladstone area. Now, this low pressure system is going to steadily move further up the coastline throughout Tuesday and Wednesday and converge with the other forming tropical low system in the Gulf of Carpentaria, which is there right now, which is then going to move over the Cape York Peninsula. And these tropical low pressure systems will meet on Thursday and then slowly track down the Queensland coastline throughout Thursday and into Friday. And you can see it here very kind of loosely with the wind curves, the wind really blowing in onto the far north Queensland coastline around Townsville. The rainfall intensifying throughout Thursday and Friday as this low pressure system slowly creeps down the coast. You can see Friday afternoon it's offshore from just Ingham, and then into early Saturday morning offshore from Townsville. Like I said, the chances of this becoming a fully fledged tropical cyclone doesn't look too high at this time, but it's certainly going to give plenty of rainfall throughout the remainder of this week and into this weekend for locations between Cairns right down to about Bundaberg, and it's also going to provide plenty of thunderstorms further inland. So from north to south, let's take a look at the rainfall accumulations over the next week or so. So throughout the course of this week and into this weekend, plenty of rainfall is expected. Nothing out of the ordinary for the Cape York Peninsula. The rainfall kind of starts into the Cassowary coast. You can see showers and thunderstorms throughout later this week, expected to bring up to about 150 millimetres at some locations along the Atherton Tablelands. No real onshore flow is expected to develop up into the far north of Queensland, and as such, rainfall accumulations do look pretty mediocre, all things considered, for both Innisfail and Tully. The rainfall pipes up around Cardwell and Ingham, where the low pressure system is expected to get itself set up, and anywhere between about 80 and 150 millimetres expected there. Ingham probably going to pick up the majority of the rainfall for the immediate far north of Queensland, and then heading further south, you can see Townsville expecting a very healthy about 200 millimetres of rainfall. That's a completely valid forecast as well, especially with the showers and storms that are expected over the coming couple of days. That will get them started, and then the heavy falls expected on both Friday, Saturday, and some more light rainfall expected on Sunday. Air expecting about 150, maybe up towards 200 millimetres as well. Same deal with Bowen. It's just this onshore flow is going to provide some pretty consistent rainfall accumulations along the far north Queensland into the central Queensland coastline, but the heaviest accumulations should be around Proserpine, where up to 350 millimetres is expected, and once again reciprocated between the other forecast models, not so much the GFS forecast, but the Axis G3 neck and neck with what the Eastern Blair forecast is saying. Further inland as well, out towards Charters Towers, Ravenswood and Mount Coolin, some great rainfall accumulations also expected out there from showers and storms expected to fire up on Friday and Saturday, and like I said, up to about 150 to 200 millimetres expected out there. Back to the coastline, you can see around Yellowborough and Mackay between 150 and 250 millimetres there. Mackay, I'd say probably on the lower side of that, closer to 150 than 250, but anywhere along those coastal ranges outside of Mackay in the right valleys up towards 250 or 300 millimetres is possible. Like I said, the bulk of that rainfall coming through on Thursday, Friday and Saturday morning. All in all, just really healthy rainfall accumulations at this time for the central Queensland and into the far north Queensland coastline. This is the first real taste of proper tropical rainfall this wet season as well for these locations. So again, a lot of people are getting really excited about this forecast. I'm not sure why a severe weather warning hasn't been issued yet for the more central parts of Queensland with the rainfall that's coming through, especially tonight into tomorrow. I think the rainfall there probably constitutes a severe weather warning. It's very much on the lower side of things though, but I definitely reckon a severe weather warning will be issued for the central Queensland coastline. I don't really have a doubt about that, so make sure you are keeping an eye out of it on the Bureau of Meteorology's website and the Bureau of Meteorology's homepage. They'll have exactly what information you'll need, but there is certainly the risk of flooding at this time, especially considering the central and the far north areas of Queensland. They're not by any measurable amount drier than what they should be. In fact, soil moisture values are much above the average, and they're really looking quite healthy here, up to about 100% along the coastline, so typical for this time of the year, but 300 millimetres falling in 2 days could still cause a few problems, and you can see it here later on in the forecast period. Those soil moisture values are much above average, especially into the inland parts, so there is still the risk of some minor flooding. It's still a few days away, and the forecast will iron itself out, and all the details will get slowly ironed out over the coming couple of days. And there's also a decent margin of error as well in this forecast as well, especially with the rainfall accumulations over the next week. Just considering that this is a tropical forecast, some locations will pick up much more and some locations will pick up much less, and I'll be able to answer those questions on the nitty-gritty throughout tomorrow and Wednesday's forecast update. So make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on those, and also if you've got specific questions or comments, then please do let me know in the comment section down below as well, and that'll be much appreciated. Looking really good for central Queensland though in terms of rainfall. Let's head down into the southeastern corner of Queensland, into the northeastern corner of New South Wales, because Wednesday we do have that thunderstorm risk. In fact, we could be seeing a couple of severe thunderstorms fire up here and there on Wednesday afternoon. The conditions are going to look pretty good, especially into the Sunshine Coast as well for some thunderstorms, potentially housing some heavy rainfall and large hailstones. Now, the risk of all-out severe thunderstorms or crazy severe thunderstorms doesn't look too high at this time, but like I said, a couple of isolated cells with heavy rainfall and large hailstones, certainly we can't be writing that off for Wednesday afternoon. Instability in the atmosphere, especially as you get further inland out towards Thallon and St. George. Not too many thunderstorms expected out there, but instability looking really good. Plenty of energy in the atmosphere for those storms to make the most of. And then along the Sunshine Coast, the valley is looking decent to good. Nothing really crazy to report on, but the further north on the Sunshine Coast you get, depending on what thunderstorms fire up there, likely to see some decent ones. Plenty of lightning, plenty of rainfall, and the chance of those large hailstones as well. Humidity values also looking really good. The wet bulb temperature also looking really good. Temperatures themselves looking really good. So all around, the conditions for these thunderstorms, they do look reasonably healthy. I mean, nothing crazy, but again, we could definitely see a good cell or two fire up there. Plenty of rainfall also expected from these thunderstorms as well. If they do fire up in dramatic fashion and they do become quite widespread, there's going to be some huge rainfall accumulations throughout Wednesday by the looks of things, especially with the Axis G3 forecast model, which is one that I use to look at rainfall for thunderstorms, and one that I've found to be pretty reliable recently for rainfall from thunderstorms. And as such, I wouldn't be surprised if to the 9 a.m. on Thursday we saw plenty of 50mm plus accumulations in the gauges from where these thunderstorms have travelled through. So looking pretty good for the southeast of Queensland in terms of thunderstorms, but that's only for Wednesday. I mean, we're going to be waiting until 2025 for our next proper severe thunderstorm outbreak by the looks of things. I'm really not seeing anything on the forecast. The conditions do become a little bit more unstable around sort of the New Year's period. It looks like we might have a bit of a tropical low to contend with in the Coral Sea for New Year's. So again, it's a really big stab in the dark, I mean, making this forecast here, but the chance of thunderstorms into the early parts of 2025, it does look a little bit possible at this time. Again, I'm very aware of how much time I've spent talking about Queensland, so we're going to change things up now and talk about the heatwave that's extending across interior parts of Australia, because it's about to get bloody hot there, and it's not very often that we have to talk about a heatwave across interior Australia at this time of the year, because normally the temperatures that they get, 42, 43, 44 for weeks on end, they are normal, but we're talking about temperatures now into 45 or 46 or 47 even. It's going to get very warm tonight, South Australia, parts of South Australia this afternoon, up towards 46 outside of Moomba, 45 for Birdsville, and 44 for Dory into the southwestern corner of Queensland. Also very warm into the interior parts of the Northern Territory, just with that its interior surface trough that's extending across. You can also see those very warm temperatures extending into New South Wales and Victoria. Mildura atop of 44, Bendigo atop of 40, and Melbourne, the runaway leader in terms of impressive temperatures here on this map, 40 degrees today. It's not often that Melbourne gets to 40 degrees, and that is going to be a hot one indeed. 40 degrees there, make sure you are in a place that has very robust air conditioning, getting yourself into a shopping centre or into a library. Even if you've got to stay there throughout the heat of the day, things will cool down when the sun goes down, and that cool change comes through at around sort of 8 p.m. So again, just make sure you are staying cool throughout the course of today, because it is going to be unbearably hot, and in temperatures of 40 or 40 plus for Melbourne, things do start to get quite dangerous, especially for those that don't have air conditioning. That cool change will come through, and tomorrow we're only expecting a top into the early 20s, so that will be a very welcome change for Melbourne. Into the western suburbs of Sydney, though, it's going to get pretty hot out there, up into the 40s for Penrith tomorrow expected. Sydney itself only expecting a top of 30 or probably about 32 there. It'll be a sticky one as well for the Sydney coastline, but you can see further inland out towards Penrith, 40 or 41 out there, so it is going to get pretty warm. And then those temperatures as well rising across interior parts of Queensland. We'll skip ahead a couple of days rather, but you can see into this weekend coming, there's going to be plenty of warm temperatures across Western Australia, up into the high 40s for parts of the coastline, into the Pilbara and the Gascoyne region. Perth a top of 36 on Saturday, and then a bit warmer, 39 on Sunday. In fact, you could get a little bit warmer than that. Another 40-degree day looks to be on the cards this coming weekend. Those temperatures are going to steadily head closer to, or further towards the east for Christmas time. You can see those warm temperatures really building across interior parts of WA, parts of Queensland and South Australia on Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day you can see it's going to be blisteringly hot across interior parts of Western Australia. Plenty of warm temperatures as well expected across South Australia. Adelaide going for a top of 37 on Christmas by this forecast, and it's also going to get hot across New South Wales and Victoria, warm into the interior. Melbourne a top of 31, Canberra with a top of 34 actually by this forecast. I think that might be a little bit bullish at this time. Sydney with a top of 27, probably a little bit too cool for the forecast. Then we're going to get a low pressure system around Christmas time, sweep all of these temperatures further towards the east, and as such those temperatures get really warm in time for the New Year's period, and it looks just in time as well, just after Christmas by the looks of things on this forecast here. So the heads up here is Christmas, while it's not expected to be record breaking hot across parts of the east, it will be very warm across the interior, but it looks like the New Year's period we're going to see some very warm temperatures indeed. But yeah, that basically does it for the temperature forecast. It's nothing out of the ordinary for Western Australia, but it is starting to get quite warm across parts of Victoria and New South Wales, especially today and tomorrow. Let's just give the tropical weather areas a bit of love as well to wrap this video up. In terms of rainfall, there's nothing out of the ordinary, or nothing really stealing the show for me at least over the coming couple of days. In fact, over the coming 2 weeks. In fact, apart from what we talked about in Queensland, rainfall looking pretty normal. It is going to get a little bit wetter than average across the Northern Territory, with up to 200 millimetres, in fact up to about 300 millimetres on this forecast here expected across parts of the Northern Territory over the next 14 days, and that's just going to be from those thunderstorms coming through, dropping 50 millimetres a night for a couple of nights, and then more thunderstorms on top of that. Looks like we're going to get plenty of convective thunderstorms into the New Year's period as well. And then if we go really late on into the forecast period, I'm talking like well into the New Year's period, we have had those rumbles of activity offshore from Western Australia on the forecast models sometime around sort of Christmas time or just after. That's since been dropped from the forecast models, but it'll be just just in time for what looks to be a bit of a burst in terms of the monsoon into the South Pacific Ocean, so around the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu and Fiji, and it looks like we might get a couple of tropical lows later on into the year. In fact, in the last couple of days of the year, offshore from Queensland into the Coral Sea. So some Coral Sea tropical lows do look possible at around that time, and I use this very loosely in terms of the forecast because it's very hard to predict tropical cyclone activity about 2 weeks in advance, but I'm reasonably confident with this one. And why is that? And why is that? It's because of a phenomenon called the MJO, which is a rotating burst of energy, or you can think of it as a rotating burst of energy, that's it in oversimplified terms, that rotates around the planet heading from east to west over the course of about a month. And we've just had the MJO burst over Western Australia. That's what gave way to Tropical Cyclone Robin and the other tropical low about 2 weeks and 1 week ago respectively. And the MJO will arrive just in time for the New Year's period offshore from Queensland and into the Coral Sea. And this is why it's producing tropical lows in this forecast here. The MJO brings enhanced rainfall, enhanced tropical low activity, enhanced thunderstorm activity to the northern parts of Australia, and it is going to be prevalent around the New Year's period. So again, we will keep a close eye on this forecast, and that's why I am taking this forecast at face value instead of really questioning it at this time. I do think that this is going to end up being a reliable forecast, and again, it is that time of the year. It'd be highly unusual if Queensland wasn't entering the New Year period without a tropical cyclone or a tropical low in the bag. So we will keep a close eye on things. It certainly looks like things are going to busy up around there, but at this time, again, take it with a heavy pinch of salt, and there's no point in worrying about it either, because we've got nothing on the cards in terms of tropical cyclone activity before at least Christmas, and in fact, dare I say, until at least 2025. After then, it's anyone's guess, but for now, it looks like it's pretty quiet across the tropics. Anyways, that is all that I have time for today. Thank you so much for watching the video to this point. It is much appreciated. Again, if you've got any feedback or suggestions, please do leave them in the comment section down below, and I'd be more than happy to respond to all of them today. You can also find me, my email, it's in the channel description as well. Feel free to send me an email with photos, footage, or a detailed weather report or forecast for your location. I'd be more than happy to read through it as well. But yeah, thank you so much for watching the video. Special shout out to the channel sponsors. The names are on screen right now. Again, I could not run the show without them, but that is all for me today, and I will catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.